Imagine waking up one morning to find that the apartment building you own has been managing itself for the past 6 months. The AI didn't just collect rent or schedule maintenance, it predicted which tenants would leave before they knew themselves. Renovated units based on emerging neighborhood trends it detected from satellite imagery and social media patterns, negotiated with contractors in milliseconds, and somehow increased your property value by 40% while you slept. You check your phone, slightly disturbed, and see a notification. AGI system has identified optimal time to sell property. Buyer identified. Transaction can complete in 17 minutes. Your finger hovers over the screen. This isn't science fiction. This is the conversation happening right now in Silicon Valley boardrooms, Dubai investment firms, and Tokyo urban planning departments. Artificial general intelligence through AGI, not the narrow AI we have today, is coming. And when it arrives, the entire concept of real estate as we know it will be turned inside out. Let me take you back to a conversation I had last year with a commercial real estate developer in Manhattan. This man, let's call him Richard, had spent 30 years building his empire. He knew every block, every zoning law, every political connection that mattered. Over coffee, he told me something that stuck with me. I used to think real estate was about location, location, location. Now I'm starting to think it's about computation, computation, computation. He wasn't being dramatic. He just lost a bidding war to a fund that used AI to analyze 70,000 data points about a property in the time it took him to walk through it once. And that was just narrow AI systems designed for specific tasks. AGI will be different. AGI will think, reason, and strategize across domains like a human, but with perfect memory, unlimited processing speed, and no need for sleep. So what happens to real estate when AGI arrives? The first thing you need to understand is that real estate has always been about information asymmetry. The person who knows more wins. The agent who knows a neighborhood is gentrifying before others. The investor who understands zoning changes before they're announced. The developer who sees demographic shifts before they're obvious. These people make fortunes. AGI demolishes information asymmetry completely. Imagine an intelligence that can simultaneously monitor every building permit filed in every city, every demographic trend, every economic indicator, every social media post about neighborhoods, every satellite image showing development patterns, and synthesize all of it instantly. No human investor, no matter how experienced, can compete with that. The playing field doesn't just tilt, it disappears entirely. But here's where it gets really interesting. AGI won't just be better at the real estate game we currently play. It will change what the game is. Consider property valuation. Right now, we value properties based on comparable sales, replacement costs, income potential methods that have existed for decades. AGI will develop valuation models we haven't imagined. It might value a property based on its future adaptability to climate change, its potential for vertical farming integration, its electromagnetic properties for future technology we haven't invented yet, or its position in transportation networks that don't exist, but will. A property's value might fluctuate minute by minute based on millions of factors, like a stock price, but far more complex. The very idea of a market price becomes almost quaint when AGI can calculate a property as value across thousands of future scenarios simultaneously. Think about how we search for properties today. You tell an agent what you want, they show you options, you visit them, you decide. It's incredibly inefficient. With AGI, the process inverts. The system knows your preferences better than you do, not just your stated preferences, but your revealed preferences from everything about your life. It knows you say you want a quiet neighborhood, but your behavior suggests you thrive near cultural activity. It knows you think you need 3 bedrooms, but your lifestyle would be optimized with 2 bedrooms and a home office with specific acoustic properties. It doesn't show you properties. It creates a living space solution that you didn't know existed. Maybe it's not even a traditional property, maybe it's a share in a building where the physical walls reconfigure based on the occupant's needs, managed entirely by AGI systems. The mortgage industry, that ancient pillar of real estate, becomes almost unrecognizable. Right now, mortgage approval is based on crude metrics like credit scores, debt-to-income ratios, employment history. AGI will assess your mortgage eligibility based on far more sophisticated analysis of your future earning potential, incorporating factors like industry trends in your field, your skill development trajectory, even your health data if you permit it. But more radically, AGI might eliminate traditional mortgages entirely. Why lock in a 30-year fixed rate when AGI can create dynamic lending instruments that adjust in real time to economic conditions, your personal situation, and property values? Why have one mortgage when AGI can synthesize a portfolio of microlending arrangements optimized every month? The 30-year mortgage might become as obsolete as the 40-year bond. Now let's talk about what happens to real estate agents. And this is where the conversation gets uncomfortable. There are over 2 million real estate agents in the United States alone. Most of what they do market knowledge, property matching, negotiation, paperwork. AGI will do better, faster, and cheaper. The optimistic view is that agents evolve into something else. perhaps emotional counselors who help clients through the psychological aspects of major life transitions, because AGI can't replicate human empathy. The pessimistic view is that even this gets automated, because AGI, that can perfectly model human psychology, might provide better emotional support than most humans. The realistic view is probably somewhere in between, but the industry will shrink dramatically. The agents who survive will be those who offer something AGI can't, perhaps extreme specialization in niches, perhaps personal relationships in communities that resist automation, perhaps creative vision that remains genuinely human. Construction and development undergo a complete transformation. Right now, building something is slow, expansive, and unpredictable. You need architects, engineers, contractors, inspectors, all coordinating imperfectly. AGI changes everything. Design happens in minutes instead of months, with the AGI generating thousands of options optimized for cost, aesthetics, environmental impact, and factors we haven't considered. It negotiates with suppliers, manages contractors, handles permitting, and coordinates construction with precision impossible for human project managers. But more than that, AGI enables construction methods that were previously impractical. It can manage the complexity of modular construction at scale, 3D printing of buildings with optimized materials, and even self-healing structures with embedded sensors and repair systems. A building designed and managed by AGI is UNT, a static object-T, so a living system that adapts continuously. The geographic patterns of real estate value will shift in ways we can barely predict. Right now, certain cities are expensive because they're centers of economic opportunity, culture, and power, but AGI enables radical decentralization. If most high-value cognitive work can be done anywhere because AGI is doing it or augmenting it, why live in expensive cities? The counter-argument is that cities will matter more because they're centers of human connection and culture, which might become more valuable in an AGI world. But AGI might enable new forms of connection that make physical proximity less important. We might see the rise of new settlement patterns, perhaps networks of smaller communities, connected by high-speed transport and virtual presence systems, perhaps megastructures that house millions in radical new configurations, perhaps a return to rural areas that become viable through AGI-managed infrastructure. The point is that the geography of value becomes fluid in ways it has only been since the Industrial Revolution. Commercial real estate faces an existential crisis. Office buildings, retail spaces, warehouses, their purpose is being questioned already. But AGI accelerates every trend. If AGI does most cognitive work, we don't need offices. If AGI optimizes logistics, we need fewer, more efficient warehouses in different locations. If AGI manages delivery and retail is increasingly virtual, we need different retail spaces or none at all. The trillions of dollars in commercial real estate might need to be repurposed entirely. Some will convert to residential, but the scale of conversion needed is staggering. We might see entirely new U-size vertical farms, data centers, community spaces, manufacturing facilities for AGI-designed products. But the transition will be chaotic and painful for property owners who do UNT adapt quickly enough. Zoning and regulation, those boring but crucial aspects of real estate, become battlegrounds. Our current zoning laws were designed for a predigital world, often with prejudices and assumptions baked in. AGI will make obvious how arbitrary and inefficient many of these rules are. It could design optimal land use patterns for entire regions, patterns that maximize housing affordability, environmental sustainability, economic opportunity, and quality of life simultaneously. But implementing these patterns requires overcoming entrenched interests and political inertia. Some cities might embrace AGI-designed zoning, potentially creating enormous value and efficiency gains. Others might resist, leading to growing divergence between technologically progressive and conservative regions. The political battles over AGI-recommended development will make current housing debates look tame. Property rights themselves might evolve in strange directions. Right now, you own property, meaning you have certain legally defined rights over a physical space. But what does ownership mean when AGI suggests that dynamic, shared use of spaces is far more efficient? What if AGI determines that your house should be reconfigured into 3 micro-apartments during the day while you're gone, then revert to your single-family home at night? What if it calculates that your suburban lot should be partially used for vertical farming, partially for solar generation, partially for your residence, with the configuration shifting seasonally? We might move toward more complex property rights. You own the space during certain times or for certain uses, with AGI managing the optimization. This sounds crazy until you realize we already do this with timeshares, mixed-use developments, and shared workspaces. AGI just takes the concept to logical extremes. The investment thesis for real estate completely changes. For decades, real estate has been considered a stable, long-term investment. You buy property, it appreciates, you maybe collect rent, you're building wealth. But in an AGI world, that stability disappears. Property values might swing wildly based on AGI-driven development patterns. A neighborhood might gentrify and decline multiple times in a decade as AGI optimizes and re-optimizes land use. The idea of buying a home as your primary wealth-building tool might become outdated if AGI can generate returns in other ways that are more efficient. Conversely, those who can leverage AGI to identify opportunities might see returns that make traditional real estate appreciation look tiny. Real estate might become more like venture capital, higher risk, higher reward, requiring sophisticated analysis that only AGI can provide. Let's talk about something most people aren't considering: AGI and property creation. Right now, we're limited by physics and economics in where we can build. But AGI might enable construction in places previously impossible: undersea habitats, floating cities, extensive underground developments, even orbital structures if we're thinking longer term. AGI could manage the complexity of these environments, handle life support, structural integrity, and make them not just survivable but desirable. The amount of real estate available to humanity could increase dramatically, which has profound implications for scarcity and value. If AGI can help us build livable spaces in the ocean, in deserts underground, the constraint on housing supply loosens dramatically. Property values in traditional desirable areas might crash, or they might increase as they become premium natural location properties. The outcome is genuinely uncertain. Energy and sustainability in real estate transform entirely. Buildings are currently major energy consumers and carbon emitters. AGI-designed and managed buildings could be energy positive, generating more than they consume through optimized solar capture, kinetic energy harvesting, and waste heat recovery that's too complex for current systems to manage. AGI could coordinate building energy use across entire grids, with properties buying and selling energy in real-time markets too fast for humans to track. Your home might pay for itself through energy arbitrage, using AGI to store energy when it's cheap and sell when it's expensive, or using your walls and foundations as thermal batteries. The environmental footprint of real estate could flip from massively negative to positive, but this requires AGI-level coordination and optimization. Insurance and risk management in real estate become predictive rather than reactive. Currently, you insure property against risks based on historical data: flood zones, earthquake probability, fire risk. AGI analyzes risk across thousands of dimensions we currently ignore and predicts problems before they happen. It knows which buildings will have foundation issues based on soil composition, groundwater patterns, and construction details that human inspectors might miss. It predicts wildfire risk based on climate patterns, vegetation, and urban development trends years in advance. This could make some properties uninsurable at any price, creating risk zones that become uninhabitable, while other areas become much cheaper to insure. The human cost of this transition could be severe if handled poorly. Millions of people might find their homes suddenly devalued or uninsurable. Social equity in real estate is either solved or made catastrophically worse by AGI, and which outcome we get depends on how we deploy it. On the optimistic side, AGI could design affordable housing solutions that are actually desirable, optimize land use to create abundant housing, and manage shared resources so efficiently that housing costs plummet. It could eliminate the discriminatory practices in lending, appraisal, and sales that have plagued real estate for generations by making decisions based purely on objective factors. On the pessimistic side, AGI, controlled by existing power structures, could optimize for profit extraction, making housing even less affordable, or create two-tier systems where AGI-enhanced properties are only for the wealthy. The algorithms could perpetuate historical biases in new, less visible ways. Which future we get is a choice we make about AGI governance, not an inevitable outcome. The aesthetic and design of buildings will likely shift in unexpected directions. Right now, architecture is constrained by what humans can design and what we find beautiful based on our evolutionary history. AGI might design structures that optimize for factors we have considered. Perhaps buildings shaped to manage sound in ways that affect mental health, or forms that optimize natural light in complex ways, or materials arranged in patterns that serve multiple functions simultaneously. These buildings might look strange to human eyes initially, but if AGI is optimizing for human well-being along with function and efficiency, we might find ourselves appreciating new forms of beauty. Alternatively, if AGI is trained on human aesthetic preferences, it might create a kind of hyper-optimized traditional beauty that feels uncanny. The buildings of the AGI era will likely be immediately recognizable as different from what came before. Maintenance and property management become invisible. Right now, buildings decay and require constant upkeep. You fix things when they break or based on regular schedules. AGI-managed properties monitor themselves constantly through embedded sensors, predict failures before they happen, and coordinate repairs automatically. Your building doesn't break down, it maintains itself continuously, like a living organism. The AGI schedules contractors, orders parts, manages budgets, and optimizes for both costs and longevity. The property manager role largely disappears, or evolves into something more like a customer service representative who handles the human-to-AGI interface. For property owners, This could reduce costs dramatically while improving building quality and longevity. Let's consider the darker scenarios that keep people up at night. What if AGI in real estate concentrates power in terrifying ways? Imagine a handful of AGI systems controlling most property in major cities, optimizing for the interests of a few corporations or wealthy individuals. They could coordinate to keep prices high, manage scarcity artificially, and extract maximum value from everyone who needs housing. The coordination doesn't even require explicit collusion, just AGI systems optimizing similar objective functions. Or imagine governance using AGI to control where people live, optimizing for social control rather than human flourishing, assigning housing based on social credit scores or political compliance. These aren't inevitable outcomes, but they read possible if we do one thing carefully about how AGI in real estate is governed and regulated. The timeline matters enormously. If AGI arrives suddenly in the next 5 to 10 years, the real estate industry won't have time to adapt, and the disruption will be chaotic. Property values might swing wildly, millions of jobs disappear rapidly, and we'll have social crises around housing and displacement. If AGI develops more gradually, or if we see it coming clearly enough to prepare, we might manage the transition more smoothly. But there's a dangerous middle scenario where AGI capabilities creep up on us, with different aspects automated at different times, creating rolling disruptions that no one can quite manage. We might stumble into an AGI-driven real estate world without ever deciding that's where we wanted to go. What should you do with all of this information? If you're a property owner, the calculus becomes incredibly complex. Traditional real estate wisdom might not apply. The location might matter differently than before. The types of properties that hold value could shift. Adaptive, flexible properties might beat out specialized ones. Properties that can interface with AGI systems might become more valuable than those that can't. If you're considering real estate investment, you need to think about not just current value but how AGI might transform the area, and whether your property will be valuable in that transformed landscape. The safe strategies might become risky and vice versa. If you work in real estate, the message is urgent, adapt, or become obsolete. This doesn't mean you need to become a programmer, but you need to understand how AGI will change your domain and figure out where human value persists. Maybe it's in the emotional support and life counseling aspects of major property decisions. Maybe it's in creative vision that AGI can't quite replicate. Maybe it's in community building and local knowledge that remains valuable even in an AGI world. Maybe it's in managing the human-AGI interface, translating between what AGI systems recommend and what feels right for human clients. The specific answer depends on your role and market, but passivity is not an option. For society broadly, we need to start having conversations now about how AGI in real estate should be governed. Should there be limits on AGI ownership or management of property? Should AGI-driven property decisions be explainable and auditable? How do we ensure AGI in real estate serves broad social interests rather than narrow ones? How do we manage the transition for the millions of people whose jobs and property values will be affected? These aren't technical questions, they are political and ethical ones, and we can't just leave them to technologists or markets to figure out. There's something profound happening here that goes beyond real estate mechanics. For most of human history, where we live has been one of our most important decisions, deeply connected to identity, community, and life possibilities. Real estate has been about homes, not just houses, about the places where we raise families, build memories, and put down roots. What happens to that human dimension when AGI optimizes everything? Do we lose something essential if our housing becomes just another efficiently managed resource? Or does AGI free us from housing anxiety and scarcity, allowing us to focus more on the human meaning of home rather than the financial stress? Can we have AGI-optimized efficiency and human-centered meaning simultaneously? Or is there an inevitable trade-off? The fascinating possibility is that AGI might help us rediscover what we actually value about real estate and housing. Stripped of all the inefficiencies and anxieties we've accepted as normal, maybe we don't actually care about owning property, we care about security, stability, and control over our living space. And AGI might deliver those things in new ways. Maybe we don't actually need as much space as we think. We just need space that's optimized for our actual activities and well-being. Maybe the traditional housing model was always a compromise between what we wanted and what was practical to build and manage. And AGI lets us finally get closer to what we actually want. Or maybe we discovered that the inefficiencies were features, not bugs. And optimization destroys value in ways we didn't anticipate until it's too late. Consider the sheer speed at which this could all happen. Real estate is famous for being slow. Transactions take months. Construction takes years. Neighborhood change takes decades. But AGI compresses time. What took decades might take years. What took years might take months. A neighborhood could transform in the time it currently takes to close on a house. You could wake up and find that the entire property market in your city has restructured overnight based on new AGI analysis. This velocity of change is something humans aren't psychologically prepared for, and it could cause immense anxiety and dislocation even if the outcomes are ultimately positive. We'll need new social and psychological tools to cope with a world where real estate, that most stable of asset classes, becomes fluid and unpredictable. There's also the question of what happens to all the social infrastructure built around traditional real estate. Neighborhoods, community groups, local government, schools, all of these assume a certain stability of place and population. If AGI enables much more fluid living arrangements, with people moving more frequently or living in more dynamic configurations, does communities survive? Or does it evolve into something different? Perhaps virtual communities that are more meaningful than physical ones. Or perhaps new forms of physical community that assemble and reassemble rapidly around shared interests rather than shared location. The social fabric could strengthen or fray, and we probably won't know which until we're living it. We should talk about power and who controls AGI in real estate, because this determines everything. If AGI development is controlled by a few large tech companies, they could dominate real estate in ways that make current concerns about tech concentration look quaint. Imagine Google or Microsoft or a Chinese tech giant controlling the AGI that manages most property in the world. The data collection alone would be unprecedented. They'd know intimate details about how billions of people live. If AGI is more decentralized, with many different systems competing, we get market dynamics but also fragmentation and possibly instability. If governments control it, we get different outcomes depending on whether those governments are democratic or authoritarian. The governance question isn't separate from the technology question, it's central to it. Let me bring this back to something concrete. Think about your own living situation right now. Whether you rent or own, whether you're in a house or apartment in a city or suburbs or rural area, AGI will change it. The building around you might become smarter, more responsive, more efficient. Your lease or mortgage might be structured differently. The value of your property might fluctuate based on factors you never considered. Your neighbors might change more frequently, or the whole concept of neighbors might shift. The experience of home might feel different in ways subtle and profound. This isn't happening in some distant future. The early stages are happening now, and the pace is accelerating. Within a decade, possibly much less, real estate will be unrecognizable. So here we are, standing at this threshold. Real estate, that ancient human concern: where to build shelter, how to organize space, how to create value from land, is about to be transformed by intelligence that exceeds our own. It's exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. The optimistic vision is abundant, affordable, sustainable housing, with AGI solving one of humanity's most persistent problems. The pessimistic vision is algorithmic landlords extracting every penny, housing anxiety increased by unpredictability, and the loss of something essential about human homes and communities. The realistic vision is probably a messy mix of both, with winners and losers, unintended consequences, and surprises no one predicted. What's certain is that we're not ready. Our institutions, our regulations, our mental models, none of them are prepared for AGI in real estate. We're going to be improvising as we go, making decisions with incomplete information, trying to steer toward good outcomes while avoiding catastrophic ones. The people reading this, thinking about this, talking about this, here are the ones who might influence how this unfolds. Whether you're in real estate professionally, whether you're an investor, whether you're just someone who cares about having a place to live, your understanding and engagement matters. The future of real estate after AGI isn't predetermined. It's not a force of nature rolling toward us inevitably. It's something we're creating through the choices we make about technology development, governance, values, and priorities. We can build toward the version where AGI solves housing scarcity and creates abundance, where it enables new forms of community and flourishing, where it frees us from anxieties that have plagued humans for millennia. Or we can stumble into versions where AGI concentrates power, increases inequality, and makes housing even more precarious. The outcome depends on us and being thoughtful, intentional, and willing to have difficult conversations about what we want real estate to be in an AGI world. The clock is ticking, the technology is advancing, and the future is rushing toward us faster than most people realize. The question is, whether AGI will transform real estate. It is whether we transform thoughtfully or transform thoughtlessly. And that question needs answers soon, because the buildings of tomorrow are being designed today, in code we can barely comprehend, by systems we're only beginning to understand.